The fluorescent lights hummed their lonely midnight song as Marcus wiped down the mahogany desk, his calloused hands moving in practiced circles. He'd cleaned this office 1,000 times, but tonight was different. Tonight, his world would shatter and rebuild itself in the span of a heartbeat. The photo frame sat there as it always had, but for the first time in 3 years of night shifts, Marcus actually looked at it. His cloth fell to the floor. The blood drained from his face. Staring back at him from that silver frame was Sarah, his late wife, her smile frozen in time, her eyes holding that same warmth that once filled their tiny apartment with light. Marcus stood frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs. 3 years ago, Sarah had died giving birth to their daughter Emma, leaving him drowning in hospital bills and grief so profound he could barely breathe. He'd taken this janitor job at Richardson Industries, working midnight to dawn, sleeping a few hours, then caring for Emma before his mother came to help. Every day was survival. Every night was this empty building, these silent halls, and memories that wouldn't let him rest. But why was Sarah's photograph on Billionaire CEO James Richardson's desk? His hands trembled as he picked up the frame. It was definitely her, that photo taken at Riverside Park, the one where she'd laughed so hard at his terrible joke that she'd snorted, making them both dissolve into giggles. He'd taken maybe 10 shots that day. He had copies at home. But how did this man, this titan of industry who Marcus had seen maybe twice in 3 years, always from a distance, have this picture? She was beautiful, wasn't she? Marcus spun around, nearly dropping the frame. James Richardson stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, exhaustion carved into his 50-something features. But his eyes were gentle, almost sad. I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't snooping, I was just cleaning and, Marcus stammered, setting the photo down carefully. That's your wife, isn't it? Sarah Martinez. The use of her full name sent chills down Marcus's spine. How do you know her name? Why do you have her picture? James walked slowly into the office, his expensive shoes silent on the plush carpet. He moved to the window overlooking the city, his shoulders heavy with something Marcus couldn't name. Please, sit down. You deserve to know the truth. I've wondered for 3 years if you'd ever noticed that photograph. You've known who I am this whole time. Marcus remained standing, his mind reeling. Since the day you applied. Marcus Antonio Martinez, widower, father to Emma Grace Martinez, born March 15, 3 years ago. The same day Sarah died. James turned from the window, and Marcus saw tears gathering in the older man's eyes. The same day your wife saved my daughter's life. The room tilted. Marcus gripped the back of the leather chair. What? My daughter, Rebecca, was 23 when it happened. She'd just started her first real job, driving to work too fast, too confident. She didn't see the truck running the red light. The impact sent her car spinning into the intersection during rush hour. Your wife was 8 months pregnant, walking to her doctor's appointment. James's voice cracked. Emergency services said what happened next was almost impossible to believe. Marcus felt his knees weakening. Sarah had gone to an appointment that day. She'd called him after, her voice strange, shaken. She'd said there was an accident, that she'd helped someone, that she needed to go to the hospital to get checked out. He'd left work immediately, panic flooding through him. By the time he arrived, Sarah was in labor, far too early. The doctors were rushing, their faces grave. And then everything became a nightmare of beeping machines and desperate voices and a tiny, perfect daughter who survived while her mother slipped away. Your wife, 8 months pregnant, Marcus, she ran into traffic. Witnesses said she didn't hesitate. Rebecca's car was smoking, the engine on fire, the door jammed. Sarah broke the window with a rock, cut her hands to ribbons on the glass, and pulled my daughter out. She dragged her 15 feet away before the car exploded. James wiped his eyes unapologetically. But the exertion, the stress, it triggered early labor. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was in distress. She told the paramedics to save her baby first. Those were her instructions. Save the baby first. Marcus couldn't breathe. Sarah had never told him the details. She'd never mentioned another woman, a fire, an explosion. She'd just said she'd helped someone, that everything would be okay, that their baby was coming. Even dying, she'd protected him from worry. Rebecca was in a coma for 2 weeks. When she woke up, the first thing she asked about was the pregnant woman who saved her. We started investigating, trying to find Sarah to thank her, to help. That's when we learned she died. That you were alone with a newborn, drowning in medical debt, barely surviving. James moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick folder. I've been covering Emma's expenses since she was born. The hospital billing, errors, that kept reducing your debt. The anonymous scholarship fund set up in her name for college. The pediatric care grant that pays for her checkups. That was all me, Marcus. It was the least I could do for the woman who gave my daughter a second chance at life. Marcus's legs finally gave out. He collapsed into the chair, his mind struggling to process this impossible revelation. You've been, all this time. I wanted to do more. I wanted to hire you for a real position, something that paid what you deserved, but my lawyers advised against direct contact. They said you might think I was trying to assuage guilt, or worse, that you might sue. So I stayed in the shadows, helping however I could, keeping her photo on my desk as a reminder of what real courage looks like. James set the folder in front of Marcus. But I'm tired of hiding. Rebecca is getting married next month. She's alive, thriving, running our company's charitable foundation. She wants to meet you and Emma. She wants to thank the daughter of the woman who gave up everything so she could live. Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were bank statements, trust fund documents, investment accounts, all in Emma's name. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, carefully managed and grown over 3 years. I don't understand. Why would you do all this? Because your wife didn't hesitate. She saw someone in need and she acted, knowing it could cost her everything. And it did. James's voice was fierce now, passionate. We live in a world that's often cruel and selfish, Marcus. But Sarah was proof that heroes are real. Not the kind in movies, but the kind who make impossible choices in impossible moments. The kind who love so completely that they'd give their last breath to save a stranger. Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. She never told me. She never said it was dangerous, that she'd. His voice broke. I was so angry at God, at the universe, for taking her. I couldn't understand why someone so good, so kind, had to die. It felt meaningless. It wasn't meaningless. Rebecca volunteers at children's hospitals every week. She's started 3 programs for underprivileged kids. She sponsors families in need. She's touching hundreds of lives, Marcus, and none of that happens without Sarah's courage. James knelt beside the chair, meeting Marcus's eyes. And you've been raising Emma alone, working yourself to exhaustion, being both mother and father. Sarah would be so proud of you. I'm just trying to survive, Marcus whispered. No, you're doing more than that. You're teaching your daughter, through your actions, the same lesson Sarah taught the world that love means sacrifice. That sometimes surviving is the bravest thing we can do. James stood, pulling another envelope from his jacket. I'm offering you a job, Marcus. Director of Community Outreach. It's real work, meaningful work, helping families like yours. The pay is substantial. Emma will have everything she needs. But more than that, you'll be carrying on Sarah's legacy of helping others. Marcus stared at the envelope, unable to move. Why now? After 3 years? Because Rebecca asked me to tell you. She said she's tired of living with the guilt of being alive when Sarah isn't. She said she needs Emma to know that her mother was a hero, and she needs you to know that Sarah's sacrifice created ripples that are still spreading. James smiled sadly. And honestly, because I'm tired of watching you clean my office at midnight when you should be home with your daughter, reading her bedtime stories, being the father Sarah believed you could be. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He thought of Emma, now 3 years old, with Sarah's dark curls and infectious laugh. He thought of the bedtime stories he was always too exhausted to finish, the school events he'd missed because he was sleeping, the birthdays celebrated quietly because there was never enough money for parties. He thought of Sarah's last words to him, whispered in that hospital room as the machines beeped their warnings, give her everything. Love her enough for both of us. I don't know what to say, Marcus managed. Say you'll come to dinner next week. Rebecca wants to meet Emma. She wants to tell your daughter about the extraordinary woman who gave her life meaning. James placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Your wife's photo sits on my desk because I never want to forget that ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day. She reminds me why I do what I do, to build a company that values human dignity, that gives back, that honors sacrifice. She changed me, Marcus. And she changed Rebecca. Let us honor her memory by making sure Emma knows exactly how special her mother was. Marcus picked up the photo, his thumb tracing Sarah's smile. In his mind, he heard her voice, that last day on the phone. I did something today. Something I had to do. I love you so much. She'd known. Even then, she'd known what it might cost. I'll come to dinner, Marcus said finally, his voice stronger. Emma deserves to know her mother was a hero. She deserves to know she comes from heroes, James corrected gently. Both of her parents. As Marcus left the office that night, the envelope in his pocket and Sarah's story finally complete in his heart, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years, hope. The grief would never fully leave, but now it shared space with pride, with purpose, with the understanding that Sarah's last act had created something beautiful in the darkness. He drove home as dawn broke over the city, thinking about the daughter waiting for him, about the dinner next week, about a future that suddenly held possibility. And he finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell him in those last moments: love never really ends. It transforms, it ripples outward, it touches lives we'll never meet. Her courage had saved Rebecca, and Rebecca's gratitude had saved them. That was Sarah's final gift, proof that one moment of selfless love could echo through years, healing wounds, building bridges, turning strangers into family. When Marcus walked through his apartment door, Emma was already awake, her curls wild from sleep. "Daddy," she squealed, running to him. He scooped her up, holding her tight. "Hey, baby girl. Daddy has something to tell you. About Mommy. About how she was the bravest person in the whole world." And as sunlight streamed through their small window, Marcus finally began to share the story of Sarah's last, greatest act of love. The story of a hero who happened to be his wife.